Here this morning. Okay. What I'm going to do in a little while is I want you to turn to the person next to you, behind you, in front of you to share in a little while. And the question is this: why are you here? Why do we do church? Why do Christians get together on a day of the week, typically it's a Sunday, and do church? Why do Christians meet church? But even more personal, I guess, why are you here? Why are you here doing church? Because if you think about it, there's plenty of other things we could be doing on a Sunday morning. We could be sleeping in. You could just be lounging around all day in your jammies. You could be, I grew up not far from here. The beaches are 5 minutes from here. We could just be hanging out at the beach all day. We can go to Bay Vista, hang out in Messina all day. But instead, here you are. And so why are you here? And so what I would like you to do is share to the person next to you, why are you here? Why do you go to church? What are the reasons? Give you a minute. Ready, set, go. Okay. I think that was about a minute. And so I wonder what you shared, and I wonder what was shared with you. I wonder what you shared and was shared with you about why you are here. Perhaps you answered, or someone said, it's what Christians do. It's what Christians have been doing for, if not thousands of years. Perhaps you shared, it's a tradition. It's again just a weekly habit thing that we do. Perhaps you wrote, oh, it's to be near to God. I go to church to be near to God, to feel God's presence. Perhaps you shared or was shared with you to learn about God. Coming to church is a place to learn about God. It's a place to encourage others. It's a place where your friends, your family are. It's a place where you relate to one another. Perhaps you have a sense of belonging. This is a place where I call home. This is a place where I feel like I belong. Perhaps you said, I have to, because when I was growing up, I would always say to my mum, Mum, why do I have to go to church? And she would always say, because you have to. It's what Greeks do. So I've got a Greek background. It's because, it's tradition. Costa, let's go. So for me, that was the answer often, because. Maybe you didn't give a reason why you were here. Maybe you're unsure, and that's okay. Maybe you're here and you're Since Spur C, that's one great reason why we do church, because it's all about Jesus. So why do we meet church? It's because of Jesus. There are many, many reasons why people go to church. The best is Jesus. So that's what we're going to be looking at today at that passage from the book of Hebrews. Now, before we look at those verses in detail, let's just work out where we are in the Bible. We're in this book called Hebrews, and even that title may sound foreign to us. What it's referring to is a Jewish Christians. So these Christians who had a Jewish background. And that's why in this passage there's lots of descriptions from the Old Testament, talking about Jewish life and practice. It's why it mentions a priest, a curtain, the most holy place, the house of God. And so that indicates how a Jewish person would approach God. Who had become Christians, who have now got their faith in Jesus. And the reason why is because they can see that in Jesus, all those elements have now been fulfilled in Jesus. All those indicators, all those promises have been fulfilled in Jesus, that he is better than all those things. That in Jesus, he is the best way to approach God. It's why the passage says that we can approach the most holy place, verse 19. We have confidence to enter the most holy place. Now, the most holy place is a spot in the temple. That's where God as it says, through his body and blood. So it's through what Jesus has done, anyone can approach God. You don't need a priest. You definitely don't need a pastor. Anyone can approach God through Jesus. And so it is all because of who Jesus is and what he has done that people can come into God's presence, can enter the most holy place. Now think about, I can't go backstage to Taylor Swift. I just can't. I can't go past the gates of Buckingham Palace to go see the King. I can't get courtside tickets to an NBA game. I can get close-ish. I can buy tickets to go see Taylor Swift. I can go see Era's concert at the movies. I can stand out the front of the gates, take a photo. But that's as far as I'm going to get. But because of Jesus, I can enter the most holy place. I can go straight into God's presence because of who Jesus is and what he has done. And so therefore, since that is what Jesus has done, that is why we meet as a church. Since this is who he is and what he has done for us, that is why we meet as a church. And we can do so, as it says, confidently, in confidence. But the passage also says we can do it with a sincere heart, that we can do it in full assurance, not feeling guilty. Often when you do something wrong, what do we try to do? We try and cover it up. And so your parents come home and they see you doing the dishes or taking out the garbage or tidying up, and first thing they say is, "What did you do?" And you're like, "Nothing. Why are you helping out?" "Oh, I just thought I'd be helpful." And they're like, "No, what did you do wrong?" And it's like, okay, yeah. We try and cover up. We don't have to cover things up with God. We can walk right in and say, yeah, I got that wrong. And God says, yeah, I know that. And that's okay, because you've been forgiven in Jesus, because who he is and what he has done. You can come in full assurance, confidence. Since that is who Jesus is, that is why we can enter God's presence. You know, some people say that you've got to scrub up for God, that you've got to put on your Sunday best. See how you guys are dressed? There's no way I would have been welcomed at my old Greek church. Suits and ties for the guys, dresses for the girls. And here you are, also casual and confident. It's great. You don't have to scrub up for God. God in Jesus scrubs us up. You don't have to put on your Sunday best because Jesus has given us best. And some people go to church to be near to God, and I get that. But the reality is that Jesus has already done that. If your faith is in Jesus, he has already brought you near to God. So as nice as this is, and I hope it's really nice for you all, let's not forget, no, Jesus has actually brought, and so since this is who he is and what he has done, that is why we meet. And it's a new and living way. The curtain has been torn. Jesus is our great priest. That is why we meet as a church. So since Jesus, since his death and resurrection for us, since he's made a new and living way, since we have confidence, that is why we meet as a church. We don't do church to receive all that stuff. Now, if you're a Christian, you've already got that. So you don't come to church to receive what Jesus has done. No, if your faith is in Jesus, he already has given that to you. So since this is who Jesus is and what he has done, that is why we meet. That is why we gather on a church. It's all because of Jesus. Since who he is and what he has done, that is why we're here. And meant to be passive. It's meant to be active. Church is not like cinema. It's not like theatre. One another to love. And so look what it says, verse 24. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Notice that it says, let us, how we, and one another. It's all other person centered. Let us, how we, one another. And so what we do ought to be for the benefit of each other. And again, that's like Jesus. He wasn't self-centered. He wasn't self-seeking. He was always serving. And so we meet to be like Jesus, to be other person centered. And notice that it doesn't say love or good deeds. It doesn't say pick and choose, because there are some people who say, oh yeah, I love Jesus, but you wouldn't know it. And there's some other people who do good deeds, but they have zero love. It says we are to spur each other toward love and good deeds. In other words, again, to be like Jesus, because he showed both. You could see that he loved by what he did. And who did Jesus show love to? Like everybody. He showed love to those who were like him. He showed love and good deeds to those who weren't like him, to foreigners, to outcasts, to those who were considered unclean. And he even showed love and good deeds to who were his natural enemies. So Jesus didn't limit his love and good deeds. And he didn't say, hey, off you boys go. go and show love and good deeds. I'm just going to kick back. No, he led by example, showing love and good deeds. And the greatest example of his love and good deeds is the cross. Whilst he was dying, what they do. Today you will be with me in paradise. Death is for us, his greatest show of love. We meet here to all, to those who are different than you. I don't talk to that person. So much more than being on a roster, so much more than just being here. We are called to spur each other on, to show love and good deeds here, there, everywhere. And so since Jesus has made a way for us to approach God, be in relationship with God, since this is who he is and what he has done, we spur each other on to be like Jesus, here, there, and everywhere. And the good news is that one day, everything will be made well. One day, everything will be made right. There'll be no more pain or suffering in this world. And so we meet to encourage each other so that we can keep in mind that future time and place. We meet to remind each other to look forward to that place, to live in light of that place, to see the day coming. You know, my mother-in-law, she is always thinking of that place. My wife, she says, "Mum, don't forget you've got a doctor's appointment next week." Her mum will reply, "Hopefully Jesus will return and I won't have to go." If my daughters say to Grandma, "Grandma, I've got this assignment due," she will say, "Well, hopefully Jesus will return and you won't have to hand it in." And so my mother-in-law, she is always thinking of that time and place. Well, we meet to encourage each other to look forward to that place as well. 25. Let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. And so this day is the next event on God's calendar. So just like when you look at your phone, you pop up a notification, this is what's next. You look at your calendar, you can see what's next. This day is what's next for God. It's what's next for us. And so on that day, everything will be made perfectly well. No more death, mourning, crying, or pain. That is what we have to look for. But the thing is, perhaps we find it really hard to look forward to that day, because some of us, we can only look forward as far as today. You don't want to think about tomorrow. You don't want to think about next week. There's a lot on your mind, a lot of stuff happening, school, home, work, wherever it may be. And you're like, how can I look forward to that day when there's just so much stuff happening today? Well, that's why you're here. To encourage each other, to spur each other on, and to spur each other on to look forward to that, to live in light of that day, that we see that day approaching. And so since Jesus made a way for us to come close to God, we spur each other on to be like Jesus, and we look forward to seeing Jesus. So since, spur, and see. The question is, why do people stop doing those things then? Why is it, as the passage mentions, that some are in the habit of not meeting? Why is it that people stop? Well, in my experience, it's because something has happened at the church. Sometimes it's because of unbelief. But in my experience, the greatest reason to stop meeting isn't because of bad stuff, but because of good. In my experience, it's because it's the big life events that change people. It's starting a career. It's meeting someone. It's having a baby. It's buying a place. It's amazing how those big life events can change a person and whether or not they continue to meet. So for example, at Hebron, often I'll have parents saying, sorry, my son or daughter can't come to our youth group because they're studying for the HSC. They've got tutoring. And then when they head off to university, they go, sorry, Costa, I can't come to a university group because, university's huge. And then they say a few years later, oh, I can't come to our young adults because, I just got a cadetship. Yeah, I just got a placement and, I need to knuckle down with that. And then they say later, oh, I can't join a cell group because, hey, I just met someone and it's really serious and, and it looks like we're going to get married. And then they do get married and it's like, oh, listen, I can't come because, we just got a new baby and you know how hard it is gets to high school. They say, sorry, Costa, they can't come to group. And so all those things, don't get me wrong, are good. By all means, study. By all means, go to uni or wherever. By all means, meet someone. That's fine. But it is surprising how often good things can get in the way. I'm not saying don't do those things, don't get me wrong. But what habits are you forming as you do them? As you make decisions for your lives, what are the habits that you are going to form? Well, since this is who Jesus is and what he has done, let's spur each other on to be like Jesus. And let's keep meeting all the more as you see that day approaching. Form good habits that are all focused on Jesus. And so to finish up, to those of you, the high schoolers, make sure you know why you're here. Can I encourage you to maybe approach your parent? Why do I have to go to church? I kept bugging my parents and saying because. Or in high school, keep bugging your parents in a nice, godly manner, of course, so that they know why they're here. And so that you yourself will be sure you know why you're here. For those of you in your early 20s, you're about to step out into the big wide world. You're about to step out, you're slowly coming out of the shadow of your mum and dad. And you've got to make decisions about yourself. I know that my daughters are doing the same. And so for those of you in your early 20s, you're making decisions about your future. Can I encourage you to also think deeply about church, about why you meet? You're making lots of decisions about everything else. Make big, good, habit-forming decisions about church. For those of you who may be getting married, starting a career, again, church can go on as a bit of an afterthought because you're just busy with everything else. Bring church to the foreground. Don't make it an afterthought, make it your first. And the problem with us oldies, I think I'm the oldest one here, is that I've been to church so many times. Those songs we sang, I've sung them a million times. And so therefore for us oldies, the problem for us is sometimes we go just out of habit. We just get up and go and we don't stop and think. And so us oldies, we need to remember why we meet as a church. And so perhaps you could encourage the oldies of your church. This is why we meet. This is why we go. And so let's remember that the reason why we're here today is because of one great reason, and that is Jesus. Because since what he has done and who he is, he's brought us to God. And so we meet to spur each other to be like Jesus, and one day we will see him. So since, spur, see, they're all about Jesus. And so there are many, many reasons why people go to church. Jesus is the best. He is the number one reason why we meet. So because of since, let us spur and let us see the day approaching. And I'm going to pray for us to do that. So let's pray. Dear God, it is awesome that Jesus a new and living way us. That since who he is and what he has done, we don't need a priest or a pastor. We don't have to dress up for church, make ourselves good. No, Jesus has done all for us. And so we go in confidence and assurance. We don't have to cover up, but we can just simply fess up, this is who we are. And so since that is who Jesus is, let us keep meeting as a church. And we do so to help each other be like Jesus. You know, do love and good deeds, not only here, but everywhere. And that can be hard because, you know, this can be a safe space. But work, uni, home, that can be another story. And so, dear God, we encourage each other to be like Jesus wherever we may be. And so we spur each other on, and we spur each other on to look forward the day of Jesus' return. Until that day, there's many things in our lives that can get in the way. Thank you for the good things in our life, but help us to form good amidst those good things. Let us not forget why we meet, not forget Jesus. So as we step out in faith, step out in faith, let us do it together. And let us remember that the reason why we get together on a Sunday morning is because of Jesus. And it's in his name we pray.